Hereby call this meeting to order. This is the March 20th, 2018 regular business meeting. This is being televised as well as streamed live on the YouTube. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag and presentation of colors by Sebastian River High School's Junior ROTC under the direction of Lieutenant Commander James Landis, U.S. Navy retired, and Master Sergeant Michael Husey, United States Marine Corps retired. Please rise for the presentation of colors and Pledge of Allegiance.
Cut. About. Face. Carry. Colors. Ready. Cut. Freeze. Colors. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Colors. Ready, cut. Post. Colors. March. Post. Colors. And salute. Ready, to. Post. March. Forward. March. Left. 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 Right. Left. 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 Color guard. Hold. Forward. Guns. Ready. Cut. Color guard. Follow.
All right, outstanding job, cadets. You may be seated. And the next order of business is the adoption of the orders of the day. Dr. Rendell, I believe you had a request?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to pull action item C off the agenda tonight and bring it back to the board for approval at a future meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the adoption of the orders of the day minus action item F.
C.
C, excuse me.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Done. Next. Dr. Rendell, you're recognized for a series of presentations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have some enjoyable presentations tonight. We're going to have a musical performance by some of our students. Then we're going to have a check presentation. We're actually going to give money to a community organization that was raised through student and staff fundraisers. And then we're going to watch a video clip on some initiatives that we have in the district. Ms. McMillan, are we starting with the musical performance?
We are.
Okay, so board members, if you'd join me in the audience.
Sebastian River Middle School Magical Singers, led by Mr. Ethan Kinkle. They will be traveling to participate in a tour of the Carolinas in April. And as a little preview of their performance on tour, they'll be singing All Ye Who Music Love and Sisi Ni Moya.
Digital age technology.
Thank you. What a wonderful job they did. You know, we have a lot of talented musicians in this school district. Okay, good evening again. So each month we do something within our district called Casual for a Cause, and it's where we choose an organization, and in exchange for a donation, our teachers, students, and staff are able to dress casual for a day in exchange for a donation towards this organization. So this month, our organization was the March of Dimes, and we have Miss Melanie Johnson and Principal Todd Racine from Sebastian River High School here to accept the check from our school district for $3,628.37. And Mr. Racine was actually duct taped to a wall today at school, twice, which is why he's wearing his jeans. And his students at the school did some really great fundraising, and so hopefully he can tell you a little bit about that. Go ahead.
Thank you. On behalf of March of Dimes, I would just like to thank the school district for your continued support of the March of Dimes and our March for Babies walk that Todd is chairing for us this year. The March of Dimes is celebrating our 80th year in 2018 and leading the fight for the health of all moms and all babies.
March of Dimes is a great cause. I've been associated with it since 2001 when I first started at Vero Beach High School and had my head shaved back then to challenge the students to raise $4,000. This year our students are they've set some goals and we are continuing to fundraise. Our FBLA is recognized nationwide. Last year they went to California for the FBLA National Conference and they were ranked 11th in the country for fundraising for March of Dimes, which is the sponsored fundraising arm for the Future Business Leaders of America. And this year our students set a goal to get back to the national conference in a top 5 finish. So part of what we did today with the student council was to tape their principal to a wall during both lunches. So I was glad to do it. And students raised a few $100s doing that with duct tape. So we appreciate everybody, parents, students, and teachers and staff that participates. It's not just the schools, but also our district office, our support offices, maintenance, and facilities are all a part of combining this together. So we really appreciate everybody's work. And also I'd like to recognize Brooke Flood, who is going to be next year's president for March of Dimes. So we're proud to have her as part of the group. So thank you.
Volunteering to have his head shaved? So,
I saved myself $45, I'm just saying.
We have 2 short videos for you tonight. The first one is on Music in Our Schools Month. Fellsmere Elementary School music teacher Sarah DePardo organized a concert series with her students, which included a literacy concert, integrating literacy in music. We had several guest readers from around the community come and read books as the students used instruments to enhance the literary selections. The National Association for Music Education used our video to help promote Music in Our Schools Month on their very own website. So here's our first video.
March is Music in Our Schools Month, and we are celebrating each week with a concert series. So this week we're doing pre-K, kindergarten, and first grade, and we're celebrating with a literacy concert. So every single class gets up and they have a book with a guest reader, and they're adding sound effects and songs and instruments and all kinds of cool things to really make the book come alive. Music gives the students that creative outlet. It gives them a chance to explore literacy through singing. It gives them a chance to explore math through rhythm. We use all kinds of transfers in our classroom with every single subject area, history, you name it, and we've talked about it in music class, how it relates to what they're learning in class. I want them to know how much fun reading can be and how you can take any book and make it come alive with music, with sound effects, and you can really have fun with it. So I've actually encouraged the students to go home and find a book and add pots and pans or anything in their house that they can add some special effects to it. You can imagine the funny things they come back telling me they've added with their parents, and it's been really a fun experience with the kids to try to do more at home with reading and adding music together.
Our next video is part of our Classroom Connection initiative. We have 16 district office staff members with teaching certifications who visited over 20 classrooms to co-teach with a classroom teacher for the day. This is done in order to maintain a relationship with the classroom and understand the challenges that teachers face every day. The School District of Indian River County launched their Classroom Connection initiative, sending district staff who possess a teaching certificate to experience firsthand the action in our district's classrooms. Over a month-long period, 16 certified staff members visited over 20 classrooms and joined forces with a classroom teacher to plan, collaborate, and launch a day of high-impact instruction through co-teaching. This interaction allows district staff not otherwise serving in a classroom to maintain a relationship and reconnect with the classroom, students, and teachers who work so hard and face different challenges every day. Our employees weren't the only ones who benefited from the Classroom Connection. Several classrooms of students were able to experience a co-teaching model that is present in some, but not all, of our district classrooms. Co-teaching provides students with greater instructional intensity, and having two minds facilitate a classroom community allows students to connect with different personalities. Co-teaching allows more opportunities for small group and one-to-one learning and stronger modeling during lessons. The Classroom Connection partnerships model behavior and positive peer-to-peer interaction for students. When students experience their teachers working together, they understand the power of respect amongst peers. This concludes our presentations for tonight. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is citizen input. And if I mispronounce your name, please correct it when you arrive at the podium. First up is Dane Ulian. Welcome, you are recognized.
Thank you. Slight correction, it's Dane Ulian.
Ulian, thank you.
Thank you, yeah. Good evening, board members. My name is Dane Ulian. I was raised here in Vero Beach, not quite born, 10 months old. I was raised here in Vero Beach, graduated high school from St. Edwards. I served in the United States Air Force for 4.5 years, worked for a while around the state, and eventually over the last couple years I had the opportunity to move my family back to Vero. And I'm very proud to be raising my kids in the town that I grew up in, a beautiful, beautiful, wonderful place to live that's just getting better and better every day. And my oldest daughter will be entering Beachland next year in August, so we're looking forward to that. I came here to thank you for taking seriously your responsibility, the duty that you signed up for to educate and prepare our kids for the life that lays ahead. And I think that, you know, the hot topic right now is school safety. School safety is absolutely 100% essential. You're not preparing them unless you're also keeping them safe. And I want to thank you for what you've done over the last week or so, working with Sheriff Lohr to put together a solution that allows for fully trained, competent professionals to keep our schools and our students safe. I think that I'd be remiss if I didn't note that I think it's critical that they not become substitutes for in-school discipline, and I think that you're aware of that issue with school resource officers sometimes starting to take on a little bit of mission creep, so I'll let that one be. I also, and most importantly, want to thank you for the course of action not taken. I want to thank you for not putting on the agenda today or not announcing that you're adopting the guardianship program, which is an absolute fantasy. The likelihood of an effective engagement by an assistant coach or an administrator of a school shooter in a way that saves lives is dwarfed. That probability is dwarfed by the certainty of a gun incident on campus by putting more guns in untrained hands on school campuses. The possibility of suicides, an accidental discharge, which happens all the time, even among the best trained of us, misplacing a weapon, having a weapon taken away from you in an altercation, and also false alarms, construction on campus, someone hears a pop, they don't know what they're responding to. These are all serious possibilities that add up to a virtual certainty if you put guns on campuses in improperly trained hands. So I want to thank you for what you have done, which is responding in a prudent way with trained professionals, and I want to thank you for not overreacting and trying to solve a real problem with what at bottom is a bad idea. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming out. Thank you for your comments. Okay, next up, Ms. Liz Cannon. You are recognized for 3 minutes. When you begin.
Good evening. I would like to take a moment to congratulate the high-impact teachers celebrated at last board meeting. Their dedication to our students is obvious, and we are glad that they are being distinguished. It's important to note that, like the Best and Brightest Scholarship, this list is rather exclusionary. In order to be eligible to be named a high-impact teacher, a teacher must receive an aggregate 3-year highly effective VAM in either ELA or math, or a highly effective Algebra 1 VAM in either 8th or 9th grade. This certainly narrows the list. I would also like to share with you how difficult it is to earn a highly effective VAM from my own example. Last year, my students made extraordinary gains on their FSA. While the average students of the same grade level at my school earned a 7-point gain over the prior FSA, my students earned an average of 15 points of gain. The VAM begins with a predicted score, poorly named since it is determined after the students take the test. And the teacher is rated on how much growth occurs above the predicted score. In my case, my students scored an average of 7.21 points above the predicted score, or approximately 30% over the predicted score. I'm very proud of that. But unfortunately, even my single-year VAM is not highly effective. The VAM calculation includes a standard error. Since I have a smaller sample size, fewer students due to teaching only 3 classes, my standard error is greater. Therefore, my students must make nearly 50% increase above the predicted score. This calculation puts people like me and teachers who teach double block of reading or elementary at a distinct disadvantage. In order to prove our value, our students need to make much greater gain than average. Aside from the difficulties of earning a highly effective VAM, there are so many teachers in our district who have made a high impact on our students. Teachers like Carla Cundiff, a kindergarten teacher at Fellsmere Elementary, whose students made significant gains on iReady. However, she does not qualify as a high impact teacher. Teachers like Paul Tomlinson, a social studies teacher at Gifford Middle, whose students score better than most on civics EOC and leave his classroom prepared for the rigorous high school courses, but again, he doesn't qualify as a high-impact teacher. Or teachers like Ren Robb, who teach both AP and honors economics at Vero Beach High School. His AP pass rate is impressive, but not impressive enough to qualify as a high-impact teacher. We have amazing teachers here in Indian River County. Just because the state chooses to celebrate only a few, should we do the same? On another issue, While the legislature has passed the Imprudent Guardian Program, districts have the choice to opt out of such dangerous programs. Each of our schools now has a school resource officer, and I applaud this action. Qualified law enforcement always will be better. Please join with Brevard, Duval, Hillsborough, and other counties adopting a formal statements opposing the idea of arming school personnel, and call your legislature to provide adequate funding to support sworn officers in the school instead.
Thank you for coming out. Thank you for your comments. I do have a question for you. Would you mind answering one question? In response to your high impact, would you be interested in doing something local?
Absolutely.
A local version of high impact? Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right. Up next, hope I can get this one right, Mr. Dylan Roberts. Sir, you are recognized for 3 minutes.
This topic's going to sound familiar after the first two speakers tonight. Basically, my name is Dylan Roberts. I'm here to speak tonight on a topic that's weighing on our minds, obviously, as citizens of our county, state, and the nation, and that's security in our schools. I've never gotten in front of this board before. I've never really gotten politically involved before, but the actions that happened earlier this month in some of the schools in our state shook me to my core. By way of background, to establish a little bit of credibility in my remaining 2 minutes and 58 seconds. I'm 41 years old, resident of Indian River County. I'm a lawyer. I'm a former Army captain. I was a platoon leader for a cavalry scout platoon with operational deployment in Afghanistan, leading men in combat. I earned my Ranger tab and my airborne wings. I was honorably discharged. But most importantly to this conversation, I guess it's one way, so it's not a conversation, is that I'm a parent of a child who's currently enrolled at Beachland, where he just placed an SRO. My kid told me about it as soon as he got home. And I'm also a parent of a child who's going to be in Beachland in a couple years. When I learned about the school board and the sheriff's joint effort to announce that they would take the initiative to put an SRO in all the schools in the county, it relieved an incredible level of anxiety that I was carrying with me ever since I read Senate Bill 7026, which is the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Safety Act, which authorizes the sheriff and the school board to put armed personnel in the schools as guardians. The issue I had with it, which seems to be a common theme, is that the Guardian program only requires 120 hours of firearm training. Some of that is active shooter training. And this is a fraction of the time necessary to obtain tactical proficiency. And when you're carrying firearms around children, or when you have firearms around children, as was mentioned, they can be misplaced, stolen, negligently discharged, as we heard happened just I think it was last week in California. So I'm here tonight, kind of like the other two speakers, to basically say that I really appreciate our elected officials calming down, taking a prudent approach to this issue. And understand that in the hands of untrained civilians, firearms are far more likely to cause a school tragedy than avert one. And I'm comforted to know that as an officer of the Sheriff's Office will be present in my children's schools, and I pray that they never have to intervene in any kind of active shooter situation for my child's sake and for those other students in the schools. Thank you for doing the right thing and putting common sense above politics, at least here in our county.
Thank you for your service. Thank you for coming out. And thank you for your comments. All right, and finally in the unclassified section here, Willie Finklin. Welcome. You are recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Willie Finklin. I'm here representing the Learning Alliance, and I want to talk about a couple events that are actually going on in the community that I just want to make everyone aware of. The first one is the the Moonshot Family Literacy Festival, which will be held at Gifford Middle on April 7th. It's a family fun event where individuals can come out and participate in literacy-based events in addition to a poetry slam, which would be the capstone event. So if you have students that are poetically inclined and would like to participate, there are prizes. We'll also be sending out some more information where we're challenging teachers to bring out, and there will be prizes for teachers as well who sign up the most students to go out. I have emailed, I believe, all the principals with this information, and some of the school board members have graciously agreed to be there, and even with the ones who couldn't, they send their regards. So thank you guys for supporting that event. And I have one more event, which is the Read Across the Field event that will be on April 21st. It'll be the 5th annual Moonshot Sports Read Across the Field. It will be held at 8:15 to 8:45, just prior to the beginning of the All-County Elementary School track meet. Everyone is encouraged to attend. This event is our tradition to bring together the largest number of readers gathered together on the football field, standing in the shape of the Moonshot Rocket. So thank you, school board.
Which football field?
Sebastian River.
Got it. Thank you.
Which I graduated the inaugural class of.
Outstanding.
All right, thank you guys for everyone. Thank you guys for all that you do, and thank you everyone for listening. And I do have Poetry Slam posters if you're interested. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for coming out, and thank you for your comments. All right, that concludes, the other items are for specific agenda items, which citizens wish to speak, to which citizens wish to speak. So next, we are on to the consent agenda. At this time, the chair will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to
Second.
Oh, Mrs. Simchick with a motion, and I'm going to say photo finish. Mrs. Justice with the second. Would you like to speak to your motion?
No, thank you.
Your second?
No, sir.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Unanimous. Done.
Mr. Chair, if I could interrupt.
Yes, please.
By adopting
Thank
the
you.
consent agenda, one of the things the board did was approve a series of donations from our community to our schools. Thank you. It's actually $6,000 in donations. One of the donations I'd like to draw a highlight to is $1,000 from the Sebastian Roadside Restaurant to our Wabasso School. The Wabasso School is a special needs school up in the north area of our county that serves students from all over our district who have special needs. The Roadside Restaurant actually has a special relationship with the Wabasso School. They provide real-life working experience for a lot of the students there at Wabasso. The $1,000 donation was used to help put on the inaugural Wabasso 5K run over at Riverside Park a few weeks ago. And I participated in the 5K that morning, and one of the things that I thought was the most special was it wasn't just a fundraising event. It was an event for those students to experience participating in a 5K. That's correct. The special needs students participated in the 5K. It was very special for me, heartwarming for me to see them make their way through the course. Most of them did run or walk all the way on the 5K. A couple used their wheels as they're in wheelchairs. But it was quite an event, staff and students participating together in the 5K. So not just a fundraiser, but a true real-life experience for those students. And any of us that know anything about the Wabasso School know that we are doing just that, providing real-life experiences for these students who in some places, other school districts in other places in the country and the world maybe don't receive such rich learning experiences as they do at Wabasso. So I want to thank the Roadside Restaurant for their continued support of Wabasso and that donation for the 5K. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for drawing attention to that, Dr. Rendell. Okay. Next is our action agenda. Action agenda item A, approval to set hearing date to adopt new, revised, and repealed school board policies. Dr. Rendell, will you please explain the item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At a workshop earlier this month, the district school board adopted new, revised, and repealed board policies, or they discussed, rather, revised and repealed and suggested new board policies. As part of the process, we need to set a date for a public hearing. So we're requesting approval from the board to set the date for the public hearing at April 24th, 2018 business meeting.
Okay. Chair will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the date.
Second.
Ms. Simchick with a motion and Mrs. Justice with a second. Would you like to speak to your motion?
No, thank you.
Your second.
No, sir.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Action item B, approval of renewal agreement with Speech Rehab Services LLC for 2017-2018. Dr. Rendell, would you explain the item, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, in action item B, we're seeking approval to increase the spending authority to $70,000 for speech rehab services. The originally requested amount was $40,000. However, we've seen an increased need for speech services throughout the year, and so we're asking for an increase of $30,000 in the spending authority for this vendor speech rehab services. The money is contained in the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or federal funding. So we do have the funding for this. We just want to be able to increase the spending authority with this vendor.
Entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Mrs. Justice.
Second.
Mrs. Zork with a second. Would you like to speak to your motion?
No, sir.
Your second.
No, thank you.
Any further discussion?
I have
Mr. Searcy, you are recognized for a question or series of questions.
That's quite an increase, though, Dr. Rendell. I don't quite understand that, because it's like a 75% increase over what we had budgeted. Did we just miss it that much, or?
We've had a large influx of students with severe disabilities this year. And so when they need these types of services, by law, we have to provide it. It is funded by the federal government in the IDEA federal funding, but we've seen quite an increase in students with this need.
It is what it is. Okay, thank you.
I will
Good.
speak.
Mrs. Justice, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. As someone whose son actually does have a speech impediment, I understand how that can sometimes hamper their learning in the classroom. So it's very important that we provide the services to those students so that they can excel and we can unfold their full potential in our classrooms. So thank you very much.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Just a question.
Mrs. Simchak.
At what month do we get reimbursed?
It's federal funding, so it's on an annual basis.
In arrears?
Well, I mean,
When
is
annually?
it June or is it August?
Mr. Morrison?
Thank you for recognizing me. We do a cash drawdown and reimburse ourselves on a monthly basis from the Department of Education, so we
Okay, thank
receive
you.
monthly.
Very good. Any further questions, comments, discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item C was withdrawn for lack of preparation. Item D, approval of budget amendment. Dr. Rendell, will you please explain the item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Action item D is a budget amendment. A lot of times our budget amendments appear in the consent agenda. But this one was rather complicated, so Mr. Morrison wanted to take some time to explain it, so I'm going to pitch it over to Mr. Morrison.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rendell. Board members, when House Bill 7069 was being crafted, the thought by the Department of Education was that we would treat the local capital improvement millage, we would treat it the same way in which we currently treat the state charter school capital outlay dollars, which is we receive those funds into the capital projects funds, we transfer them over into the general fund, and we distribute them to the charter schools within 10 days of receiving them. The memorandum that you have in your backup discusses that the memorandum sent on January 9th talks about changing the accounting method for those local capital improvement dollars. What it did was say, basically, you raise the money in the capital funds, you just pay it straight from the capital funds and not involve the general fund. So the amendment that you have before you under Object Code 3600 transfers, that knocks out the revenue, so to speak, that it would have been coming over from the capital fund into the general fund. And then under appropriations, we also release the appropriations because there's no money coming into the general fund anymore. So it is an adjustment on the budget to take out the revenue coming in and the appropriations, which would have been used to distribute the money to the charter schools. We did make our payments according to law, and we paid that straight from the capital funds as the technical assistance note from the Department of Education guided us to do. So I wanted to make sure that I explained that movement that you've seen in the budget for that amount. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Chair will entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Mrs. Justice moves approval. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Simchak. I'll pinch hit. All right. Would you like to speak to your motion?
No, sir.
Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. This is the one I was waiting for. All right, action item E, approval to transfer approximately $31,099.93 in remaining 2014 B Certificate of Participation project account funds to the 2016 B Certificates of Participation Debt Service Fund. Dr. Rendell, would you explain the item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I begin, we do have a typographical error in the heading. Says approval to transfer approximately $31,099.93 in remaining 2014B certificate of participation project account funds. It's a 2016B funds. Both of those numbers should read 2016B.
Okay.
So we're taking the remaining 2016B funds and transferring them to the 2016B debt service funds.
Got it.
So it should be 2016B, both places you see that. So the board may recall that earlier this school year, we closed out the project at the Citrus Bowl and Beachland Elementary School. There were approximately $31,000 in funds remaining from those two contracts. A little over $24,000 in the Citrus Bowl project and a little over $6,000 in the Beachland Elementary School project. Those funds were borrowed funds. We got those funds through a COP, so we can't apply those funds to any other projects. Typically, when we come in under budget in a project, a capital project, we can then take those funds and apply them to another capital project. And we did have a discussion earlier this year about those leftover funds. Could they be used to be applied to the Citrus Bowl and Beachland for any other related project but it would have to fall within the scope of work of the original project. We could not find any projects that we could do that fell within the original scope of work for those projects for those prices, so we will now apply these funds to the debt service. So we'll use basically the leftover funds to start paying down the debt. So we're just asking for your approval to be able to do that.
Entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Mrs. Justice moves approval. Mrs. Zork seconds. Would you like to speak to your motion, Mrs. Justice?
No, sir.
Mrs. Zork?
I just want to thank staff for being able to bring this to us and having the insight to put it back into paying off the debt. So I appreciate that, because I'm sure that we could have looked a little deeper and we might have been able to find somewhere to put it, but I appreciate being able to pay down the debt.
Any further discussion? All right, well, I would like to say that I love this, and you know, as the dollars come to us, they come sometimes with strings and sometimes with chains, and we can only spend them a certain way. And I really think that it's good fiscal policy to, if we've exhausted the opportunities at those locations to pay down the debt, it's just good policy. So for that reason, I look forward to voting yea on this. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. The motion carries unanimously. Action item F, approval to renew agreement for SDIRC 2016-09 RFP for electrical contractors with multiple vendors. Dr. Rendell, will you explain the item, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In action item F, we are requesting approval to renew an agreement for a period of 1 year with Bismarck Electrical Services, Complete Electric, Jarrellcom Incorporated, and Paragon Electric of Vero for small electrical projects on an as-needed basis. The estimated annual expenditure is $500,000. This is a renewal for a current contract with these vendors.
Very good. Entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Mrs. Simchek moves approval.
Second.
Mrs. Justice seconds. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, I do. This is just really good business to pre-approve different vendors, to get them pre-approved so that they can enter the schools, all set up. You never know when you have a small emergency, so the planning that goes into this and the other ones that are going to come in the next action items, which I just won't speak on, but it's great planning, and it just, by us approving this, it just makes it smoother for our staff to go about the business of the day, which isn't always just education, just to keep these buildings going and safely running. So, you know, I support this fully and the rest that come through.
Great. Mrs. Justice, your second? Yes, sir. Any further discussion? Mr. Searcy, you are recognized for a question or a series of questions or comments.
Thank you very much. Thank you. On the, we have several different electrical contractors we're looking at here. Do they have set prices with us, or how do you determine which one you're going to use for a given project? Is it based on price or?
Turn it over to Mr. Morrison.
I would turn that over to Mr. Teskey in the Operations Division. I think that he would be best suited to answer that. But I do believe there are bid prices, because these are based on a RFP proposal. So these are bid prices that we are receiving. How the actual work is determined and who gets what, I think that's probably on a best fit basis, but he would be able to speak to that.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Morrison. It is the bid process. We're trying to use vendors who have a history in the building, who have possibly done the original construction or the upgrades previously. Of course, we look at their previous work that they've used in the district, but it is a bid process. So, you know, at this point in time, we're entertaining bids and looking at portfolios and visiting sites they have worked at and previous schools.
But we're already approving them tonight. Before you've done that background checks, and I'm not background, but the research.
Yes,
Is that
sir.
correct?
We've worked with some of these firms in the past.
Speaking of background, and we had a little discussion of safety, one of the things that is important to remember is that one of the reasons we do this is so that they can have people who are Jessica Lunsford Act certified, and it's not just letting folks into the building who may not be safe around children. So this is one of the reasons we do business this way. Any further discussion?
And Mr. Searcy, some of these are a renewal as well, too.
Yeah.
Somewhat?
Some of these are a renewal as well.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. On to action item G. Approval to award SDIRC 12-0-2018 JCRFQ for architectural services to multiple firms. Dr. Rendell, would you explain the item, please?
I'll do my best. Actually, action item G and H are together.
Okay.
Action item G is the RFQ, and then H is the contract. So in action item G, we're seeking approval to issue the RFQ for architectural services to multiple firms. The individual projects assigned under this contract will be limited to those with an estimated construction cost which does not exceed $2 million, and for the study activity fees which do not exceed $200,000. The estimated annual financial impact is $1 million. The contract period for this RFQ is March 20th, 2018 through March 19th, 2019. And so in action item G, we're actually asking for approval for the RFQ, and then in H, the continuing contract services with those vendors.
Okay. Accept that explanation for items G and H. Chair will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Ms. Simchek moves approval. Mrs. Justice seconds. Would you like to speak to your motion, ma'am?
Yeah, so for the same reasons, it would be an example like why Donadio was selected for the technical school. It was part of this group and pre-planned so they could, you know, with the best fit or previous work on a project could you know, be selected quickly and move forward on any projects that might come up. If we all remember, the Citrus Bowl came up very quickly, things like that. So it's always good to have pre-approved up to a limit as stated within this action item.
Mrs. Jester, would you like to speak to your second? No? Any further discussion or questions? No? Okay. Saw you leaning forward, so I just used your nonverbal
no,
cues there.
and I have weekly meetings, and
Sure.
this is, normally I get all my questions
Right.
answered during my meeting, so that's why you might see us not say anything, but we spend a lot of time with staff if we have questions ahead of time. So we're ready when we get here to vote yes or no, so.
Right. That's why you didn't hear any questions on C. All right, so any further discussion of this item? I have none. All right, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Action item H has been explained to you. At this time, the chair will entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Mrs. Justice moves approval.
Second.
Mrs. Simchek seconds. Would you like to speak to your motion, ma'am?
No, sir.
Your second?
No, sir.
Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Action item I, approval to award SDIRC 13-0-2018 JC RFQ for mechanical engineers to multiple firms. Dr. Rendell, would you please explain the item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, action items I and J go together. It's a very similar process to what we just explained. Action item I, we're asking for approval for the RFQ for different mechanical engineering firms to work on different projects. And then in action item J, it's the list of firms to be awarded those continuing contracts. The Purpose of this RFQ is to award multiple firms to provide mechanical engineering services on an as-needed basis in the areas of mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. The Facilities Department will assign projects on a rotational or best fit basis pursuant to School Board Policy 6330. The estimated annual financial impact is $350,000. Contract period for this RFQ is March 20th, 2018 through March 19th, 2019.
Okay. Chair will entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Mrs. Justice moves approval.
Second.
Mrs. Work seconds. Would you like to speak to your motion, ma'am?
Yes, sir. This was quite a bit of reading that we had to do since Tuesday, and I was able to look at all the different contracts and the pricing by the hour, and there is a variance between, some firms charging more than others. So I would imagine it's being chosen by, again, the best fit, and I'm happy to always see that when able to, we work with local firms.
Right.
I will be happy to support this.
Okay. Your second, Mrs. Wood. No? What's a mechanical engineer do? I'm just kidding. That's fine. We could have a STEM moment or whatever. All right. So we have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Action item J has been explained to you. This is the awarding of the contract. At this time, the chair will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Mrs.
Second.
Simchek moves approval. Mrs. Justice seconds. Would you like to speak to your motion?
No, sir.
Your second, no. All right. Preemptive strike. Any further discussion?
I have a question.
You have questions?
Yeah, I have a question, yeah.
Ms. Searcy,
I have
okay.
a question, yeah.
You are recognized for a question, series of questions or comments.
I noticed in here that most of these engineers are from out of town. Is there any particular reason for that? Or we don't have any engineers in our town, or they don't apply, or what?
I'll have to ask Mr. Teske if he wants to respond to that, or Nick, or Joe.
Okay. When you come to the podium, just please remind the folks at home and on the YouTube who you are, what you do. Thank you.
Jeff Carver, thank you. So both of those RFQs were advertised locally in the local paper, and every single responding firm in both cases were recommended award, and they're just, they were advertised on Demand Star and in the paper, and there just weren't that many local firms that submitted.
There seemed like there were a number of them out of Brevard County, and I guess is the reason there because of the Space Center and I guess the need for electrical engineers in that area? Or?
Just an observation on my part, there's more civil engineering firms located in River County than there are mechanical and architectural. I don't know if it's relevant to this RFQ or not, but that's one thing that I've noticed.
I do have a question. Yeah, I do. I have a question. So what would prevent, because with you saying there were some local engineers that applied, what would be a criteria that would keep them from being on the list?
For the ones that submitted, every single firm that submitted was selected because we have a need. I think there were 7 total that submitted, and we have that many projects to where we really need a more robust pool, so everyone was awarded. We use an evaluation instrument to evaluate. There's a committee is put together, an evaluation committee, and they're given instructions, and they follow the instructions to evaluate the submittal. One of the ways, for example, that a firm may get a lower score is if they don't provide references or valid references or references that are current. That's one way they would get a lower score. There's 2 items within the criteria, and the criteria is outlined in statute, just so you know. I didn't make it up. It's in statute. So there's 2 that are very objective, like location. So if they're located in Indian River County, they get 2 points, whereas the other firms get either 0 or 1, depending on how far away from Indian River County they actually are. And then there's a point given to them for having certified women-owned or minority business enterprise. And it's a certification that they're given by the state, and they have to provide a valid certification to that. They can't just say they are, they have to prove it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you so much. All right. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Action item K, approval to increase purchase order spend authority to Famoso DBA Manpower, Inc. for the provision of sub-custodial services. Dr. Rundell, would you please explain the item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And action item K, due to an increased demand for custodial services, we are requesting an increase in purchase order authority for Manpower Incorporated of $56,341.37 to complete the fiscal year. The estimated budget of $222,504.08 was already in the budget. However, the original spend authority for Manpower was $150,000. A lot of the additional demand, or this increased demand for sub-custodial services, was due to the extensive cleaning that we did at all of our schools during the flu epidemic. We were deep cleaning the schools every night for a series of weeks, actually, and so we had to call on additional substitute custodial help to do that.
Okay, you've heard an explanation. Chair will entertain a motion at this time.
Move approval.
Mrs. Justice moves approval. Mr. Frost seconds. Okay, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, I think the school district's response during the flu epidemic that really has hit across the country was excellent. I know that our own facilities department started using some different types of cleaning agents to make sure that we cut down on germs being spread. Considering the impact that the flu had on other districts around the state and around the country, I think we were very lucky, to be honest with you. And I say that with crossed fingers, with no children that have come down with the flu yet. So hopefully I haven't jinxed myself. But, you know, I think I'm very thankful that we were able to keep our schools as clean as possible so that we can have students in classrooms and that they're learning.
Okay. I've already asked Dr. Rundell a series of questions, which I may ask again in the public, but as is the custom, would anybody else like to speak first? Question. Mr. Searcy, you are recognized for a question, series of questions or comments.
The does our cleanup staff or custodial services, they don't have the ability to handle the kinds of cleanups that we need this money for?
I can have Mr. Michael respond to that while he's on his way to the podium. It's not that we needed the substitute custodial help because they were doing something different.
Yeah.
We have substitute custodians employed in our buildings all the time because we have substitute positions that are unfilled. We have substitutes that are out on leave, workman's comp, and things like that. So we use this service already. That's why we had a budget authority of $150,000. So when those same day substitute custodians are being asked to work at night, substitute custodians, that drives up the cost with, drives up our PO to Manpower. So it wasn't that necessarily these substitute custodians were doing something our regular custodians weren't. We already had substitute custodians working, and then we needed them to work more. And then there were probably some cases where we had some additional work that needed to be done, and maybe our frontline custodial personnel didn't respond. So, Bob, anything to add?
Yeah, Robert Michael. That is correct, Dr. Rundell. So the sub-custodial budget is used for call-outs, staff that are on workers' compensation, FMLA. So it's used a wide pool of reasons. We always try to look at moving staff around whenever possible, but, on any given day, as Dr. Rundell said, we have a need for sub-custodians.
But to be clear, so during the flu epidemic time, and even recently at another school this week, we've had to, increase the hours of our own custodians. So we don't need to ask for budget authority for that because they're part of the payroll. But to increase the amount we can pay Manpower to cover for that additional hours of work being provided by Manpower, we have to ask for this increase in purchase authority.
Follow up.
Do we find that these folks from Manpower do as good a job as our CWA workers do?
So Ann Reben, our new custodial services coordinator, one of her first things was to meet with Manpower. She's setting up a training program so that Manpower is actually doing the same training with the folks that they're sending here as that we're doing with our staff.
So that's a yes? They do
Yes.
as good a job? Oh,
Well, yeah.
okay.
I personally can't evaluate that, you know, right at this moment. But we are setting up the procedures to make sure they're trained the same way.
And they have the same clearances as far, of course, these are all at night, or are they during the daytime and they?
Some are daytime, some are at night.
Do they have the proper clearances for
They
our
do,
students?
yes, absolutely.
Okay.
That's why we use firms like Manpower, because they do
Okay.
have the ability to
Thank you.
have the clearances.
Mrs. Ork, you had a question?
I do.
Comment?
I just, maybe for clarification, it's a very specific number, $56,341.37, correct? I was trying to find an estimate of how we got to that number, and I wasn't able to find anything unless I'm missing it in the backup.
I can
How
speak
did
to
we get that to that specific number?
Last year, the budget was based off of last year's cost, and then we ran a little bit over last year, so we came to the board in June to carry us through to the end of the year for the budget. So that's where we budgeted. The $222,000 was based off previous year's budget. To date, we've spent $166,163. We had 16 weeks remaining when we submitted the information. So basically, that's how the 56,000 number came to. So that's based off the average of what we're spending weekly throughout the 36 weeks that we've already gone through the year. If all things stay the same, which we're running roughly 11 sub-custodians per week, then we expect that's where we're going to be by June 30th, at that number.
Okay. You know, Mrs. Simchak, you're recognized.
So does that mean we have 11 positions open for custodial that we can't fill?
I wouldn't say that all 11 are open. Some are on FMLA, family medical leave, others on other types of leave, could be workman's comp.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's an average.
Okay.
Currently, when I checked just recently, we had 7 staff members on workers' compensation, 2 on FMLA, and then there were sick call-outs, things of that nature, vacations.
And I will say that in the conversations I had is, you know, you have to look at the ability and the motivation piece of it. And we saw here what happens is the flu epidemic hits the staff. So they can't. I mean, if they wanted to come to work, they couldn't. So sometimes we have to reach outside, and that's my understanding of what happened here is that these were sometimes overtime, which results from having the staff member during regular time who is sick. So we pay that regular time, and then now we have to go beyond this because that individual is not available to work the overtime to clean up because they are ill themselves. Mrs. Justice.
Yes, Mr. Frost, and just a final note on that. Indeed, some other school districts around the state actually had to close schools because of that very reason, to do deep cleanings, and we are lucky that we were able to keep schools running and keep our students safe and healthy. So that was a good thing.
I do have a couple more questions.
Sure, Mrs. Ork, you are recognized for a series of questions or comments.
So Manpower, tell me about them. Is that a local company?
It's a national firm,
But
but
do
they do
they
have a
have an
local
office?
office. Yeah, they have a local office here, so they're hiring local people in the
So,
Vero Beach
and
area.
forgive me if you've already explained this, but if we need a sub to come out to the school, do we have a pre-approved sub list that comes out to the school? How do we make sure that every sub that's coming out to the school has been checked for security background? Do we make them verify that before they send them in?
Yes, Manpower.
How do we do that?
I might have to defer to Jeff Carver if he's still here. The process is set up for all vendors who are on that recurring list to have their staff, Jessica Lunford's, certified if they're going to be there during school hours.
I guess my question is, you know, we're supposed to trust, but we need to verify everybody that comes into the school. So how often do we verify that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing?
I'd have to check Mrs. Ork. I really don't know.
Okay. Well, that's something I'm very passionate about, to make sure that even when we use these outside vendors, that we know that not all vendors have good practices on that, and I want to make sure going forward that we check and double check on all this. Okay?
Understood.
Thank you.
Okay. Would you please share with the entire board whatever you share with Mrs. Ork as far as the procedure?
I'm sorry.
If you're going to get something to her as to the process, just make sure the rest of the board has it as well, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
further questions? Mrs. Simchak?
And I would just affirm of what she was saying. So, teachers and we have rules where they must report that they've been arrested and things like that. Not that that's a safeguard, because, you know, they could be arrested last night down in what other county and come to work, you know, but again, with, and Manpower has been around for years. They started really more with secretarial pools, but, and they are nationwide, and they are a good firm. However, if, I would be curious, just at some other time, as Chairman Frost said, that, you know, if somebody goes on our vendor list and they're pre-approved, but that's, you know, they don't run by our rules, and then 6 months within that year on the sub-pool, they are arrested or now unclear. I would like to know where, and that, what is this check and recheck of that process in the sub-pool?
I'll research that and
Thank
get back to the board.
Thank you. Any further discussion? We do have a motion and a second. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We are now into extra innings. Our agenda. Action item L, approval to terminate support staff employee. Dr. Rendell, would you please explain the item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In action item L, we are seeking approval to terminate an employee's contract with us. The employee's name is listed in the bulletin and there is backup material.
Thank you. Chair will entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Move approval.
Second.
Mrs. Justice, would you like to speak to your motion?
No, sir. Actually, yes, you've said before, and I'll say again, it is unfortunate that we do terminations in this manner, but, you know, it is the work of the board.
The law. Mrs. Ork, would you like to speak your second? Yes, I'd like to go on record because I do it every time. This is, you know, in business, this is something you usually do behind closed doors, but unfortunately, the law is such that we have to do it on TV. And we do our best, and I appreciate the discretion exercised in as far as we can. Okay, we do have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Action item M, approval to terminate support staff employee. Dr. Rendell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In action item M, we're also seeking approval to terminate an employee's contract with us. The employee is named in the bulletin and in supporting materials.
Chair will entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Okay, I move approval. Mrs. Justice. Can we establish a rhythm here?
Second.
Circe, second. Motion?
No, sir.
Second.
No.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Action item N, approval to terminate support staff employee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In action item N, again, we're seeking approval to terminate the employee's contract with us. They are identified in the bulletin and in the backup materials.
Okay. Motion, please.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Mrs. Simchak, the motion. Mrs. Justice with a second. Would you like to speak to your motion or your second?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Action item O, Dr. Rendell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Similarly, in action item O, we are seeking approval to terminate the employee's contract with us. Again, they are identified in the bulletin and in the support materials.
Thank you. Chair will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Mrs. Simchak with the motion, Mrs. Justice with the second. Would either of you like to speak to that?
No, thank you.
Very good. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We do have a couple speakers.
Got one more.
We have to introduce it?
We have one more.
Got one more.
Public comment first, before we introduce it?
Okay.
I forget. Okay, I thought I was on track. Okay, our next item is action item P. You'll hear a description in a moment. Before that, we do have citizen input. Mr. Mike Murray wishes to speak at this time. Sir, you are recognized for 3 minutes of comment.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Rendell, support staff. I noticed that you didn't introduce the names of the employees. Is that something you don't want me to do? Is it record or?
Yeah, it's in the record. It's at your discretion. We just choose to, in our work, we choose to keep it from putting it on TV if we don't have to, but it's at your discretion.
I'll do the same. My name is Mike Murray, President of CWA Local 3180, and I am speaking on behalf of employee represented on item P. We recently found out from this employee and through the school board agenda that this employee is to be voted on tonight for termination. I think it's a mistake. 2 weeks ago, we received a call from this employee that there were issues at her school that needed to be addressed. She stated that she was yelled at and bullied from her coworkers and made fun of from her head custodian. She even had items hidden from her, for example, her radio, which left her no contact of her employees or the support staff. This employee has not been treated fairly, and we discussed this with the principal, and we're working on a solution for this harassment. For her to be terminated due to her lack of skills is unfair. How can she get the deserved training when the team was harassing her and not helping where needed? Board members, you have the power to overturn the superintendent's recommendation for termination, and I'm asking you to overturn this decision for this employee. Please give us the time to work with her and possibly have her transferred to another location, one that she will feel like part of a team and not as an outsider. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out. Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Maureen Weisberg. And you're recognized for 3 minutes of comment.
Good evening, board members, Superintendent Dr. Rundell. My name is Maureen Weisberg, Vice President of the local CWA. I first met employee P 3 weeks ago when she was having some problems with her coworkers at the school. We had a meeting with her principal so she could talk with her staff. Last week, employee P stated that she was terminated under the 90-day probationary period. Employee P has worked 68 days. She went from being nominated Employee of the Month to being terminated 4 weeks later. The principal does have the right to terminate without giving a reason. Moving forward, we are asking if we can complete employee P's 30 days at another school site with the help of our new custodial trainer. Also, we would like to see, if possible, the new custodial trainer be included in all new hire process and the 90-day evaluations to ensure consistency in training and professional staff. This will also help our principals with some of the workload. Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thank you for coming out. Thank you for your comments. Okay. All right. At this time, Dr. Rundell, would you like to introduce and explain the item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In action item P, we are seeking approval to terminate the contract with the employee identified in action item P. The name is in the bulletin and in the supporting documents.
Okay. Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Mr. Searcy?
Second.
Mrs. Justice, would you like to speak to your motion, sir?
Yes, how long has this employee been on our staff?
Less than the 90-day period. It appears, if the information was correct, about 60-plus days.
And we've done everything that we can to try to support this employee.
I'm not going to say that we've done everything we can or that we haven't done everything we can. We've reviewed the situation and believe that termination is what's in the best interest of the district.
Okay. Mrs. Justice, would you like to speak to your second or ask a question?
I think our building leaders at our schools face a number of different challenges every day on their campus, and if the building leader of the school feels that it's in the best interest of the district or their students at the school to make this decision, then I feel that I need to respect it at this time.
Mr. Searcy.
I have one other question. Who actually makes does the CWA have any input into movement of that particular employee to another school? I noticed that the gentleman mentioned maybe moving them to a different school, more training or whatever, but does the CWA have any input in where that employee is going to be located? I know the superintendent does, but...
The employee can request a transfer if certain conditions are met.
They request that of you or the CWA or?
Of the superintendent.
Superintendent. Okay.
Mrs. Zork.
No, I appreciate the comments because this was just brought forward, just brought to my attention as all of us. But, new information is here. I'm a little puzzled if the person has been here, let's say, for 60-something days and was identified as Employee of the Month. I'm puzzled with that, and, hearing that, and, not every school is a perfect fit for everyone, and so hearing also that there might be a little conflict within the group, I would like to see maybe for this employee to work out the rest of the 90 days at a different location and see if we can get a second opinion to see if maybe it was a personality conflict that had happened, and to see if maybe we can get a second opinion at another location from another supervisor. It's just my thoughts.
Mr. Searcy.
Did the employee apply for a transfer?
I'll defer to Mr. Green on that. He's more familiar with the case.
I'm not familiar of an application for transfer, and to the best of my knowledge, I believe today is day 73, just for clarification.
Okay. Mrs. Zork.
Well, it sounds like the employee just found out herself that she was going to be terminated, so maybe she doesn't know, too, that she has that option to apply somewhere else. So I would like us to give the employee the opportunity to apply at another location and see if we can have her work out the rest of the days there. And again, get a second opinion from another crew leader to see if, because we just heard we're utilizing manpower for outside services and maintaining custodians within the school. It seems like it's a problem, so I would like to see if we can maybe work something out. And then at the end of the true 90 days, perhaps it might call for a termination at that time.
Any further comments, questions? I'll weigh in on well, it's not a substitute motion, but the idea. I have a couple concerns with that. It wouldn't be fair to the receiving site administrator to only have a few days, to have a shorter period, and it wouldn't even be fair to the employee to have to jump through the hoops to impress that administrator in the shortened, in the truncated period. I certainly don't believe there's anything that would preclude this employee from applying for a vacancy where available. Is that accurate?
Mr. Green can speak to that.
If we terminate an employee, are they not eligible to apply for other future positions?
They're not ineligible to apply for
Okay.
a future position.
There you go. So it is conceivable that should this board take action, the action recommended, that this employee would have an opportunity to apply for, if there exists a vacancy and that site administrator wished to employ them. But I'd have concerns about just transferring midterm. If we have the ability to suspend the law and extend the 90-day period, I'd say, okay, let's move and try 90 days. But we have an either-or situation here with which we do not have the flexibility. So I'd like to hear from other board members if they have feedback.
Mr. Frost?
Yes.
I certainly do not take any terminations lightly, and I consider it a large responsibility to do this. Again, in this specific instance, this person has been identified as best not being in the school, and I have a responsibility to the students at that school to respect that decision in this moment, because the person in charge of that school has made that decision. Again, the decisions that I make here, I try to make students the focus of every decision, and even in cases that it can be extremely difficult at times, sometimes that simplifies it for me, and in this moment right now, putting students first, I believe that I will continue with the termination.
Mrs. Simchek, would you like to weigh in or no?
Yes, I'm just
Okay.
going to say I will support this motion. In general, we know that the 90-day mark is a with cause or without cause mark, and I respect all the things my fellow board member has said, along with the recommendation brought forward by the superintendent.
Okay.
Support this.
Mr. Searcy.
The recommendation is terminate the employee without cause. What would be a situation where there would be for cause?
I'd ask Ms. DeAgresta probably to answer that question.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
I
for
don't really
her.
want to play, you know, creating scenarios or anything like that.
Mr. Searcy, during the probationary period, an employee can be let go for whatever reason. And there was a mention about it being perhaps a statutory requirement. This is for a support employee, so it's within our collective bargaining agreement that the 90-workday probationary period is established in our collective bargaining agreement. So it's something that was bargained between the parties and agreed upon. Once the 90-day probationary period expires, any employee in this particular category, we would have to actually charge them with something. Your collective bargaining agreement sets forth certain things they may be charged with. Perhaps it's improper use of leave. It could be improper work that they do. It could be perhaps interactions with employees, interactions with students. I mean, there's a laundry list of reasons why someone may be terminated for cause. And if we find ourselves in that scenario, it's a different process. Where we provide the employee with a charging letter. You've heard that phrase used before, that lays out specifically what the issues are that the employee is being charged with. And if the employee wishes to contest those specific charges, in our collective bargaining agreement with CWA, there is a grievance process where they have to go through the steps of the grievance process. And at the conclusion of the grievance process, if they're still unsatisfied, they are eligible to file for arbitration, and an arbitrator makes a final decision with regard to the termination. So you're looking at two different train tracks, if you will. One without cause or during your probationary period. It's simply done here at the board level. If we move into the scenario of it being a for-cause termination, there's a process, a grievance process to be followed in your collective bargaining agreement.
So this one is just cause?
It is
Just do it just cause we wanted to?
It's during the probationary period.
Right. So there are potential remedies. I'm sorry, did anyone else want to speak? Okay. So there are potential remedies in the bargaining process where perhaps future bargaining iterations can provide flexibility if both parties were to, not on this particular case, but in general, if there were a wish, if between days 60 and 90, if the will of both sides, if they could reach a collective agreement, which is the idea of the bargaining, then perhaps that's a possible remedy for future instances. I also like the suggestion of one of our speakers to, and that's the great thing about the public input piece, is having new custodial hires work with the trainer. So that's a best practice that we can start to make sure that our onboarding process, if you will, is a little more robust and along those lines. Not that that's the case here, but certainly that sounds like a good practice to me. Okay, I think I've heard from everyone. Okay, all right. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
No? Okay. 4-1 with Mrs. Zork dissenting. And with that, we have reached the end of our regular agenda. Dr. Rendell, you're recognized for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would hope that most of our families received a text message today. As part of our increased efforts to maintain security and safety of our students and to increase our communication capabilities. Our automated phone messaging system, so most of our families have probably gotten automated phone calls. We also have the ability in our system to load text messages to, if you have a cell phone registered with us in your son or daughter's account, we can send you a text message. So today, we sent out a text message, and if you wanted to receive future text messages as part of an emergency notification system, you simply had to respond Y to the text message and you receive that. So if you're a parent and you're watching this or you're in the audience tonight and you did not receive a text message from us today, you need to contact your school and make sure that that cell phone number is your first number listed if you want to receive emergency text messages that way. We plan to use the text message feature only in the case of emergencies. So if we had a situation at a school, code red or some active shooter situation or something that was very serious of nature, that's when we would use the text message feature. So by signing in to the text message bank, you're not going to get text messages from us all the time. We'll probably still continue to call you on the school messenger system, but the texts will only be used in cases of emergency to announce maybe that there's an emergency at a school, and then if there's an alternate location for pickup or something like that, that would be texted out and that kind of thing. So we urge all of our parents who have cell phones, if you didn't get a text message today, please contact your school because we want to make sure we have all the right cell phone numbers in there so that we can issue emergency text messages. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right, and we are under board discussion. There are no items published on the agenda. Would any member wish to speak to a discussion item?
I would.
Mrs. Ork, you're recognized for a discussion.
I've been speaking with Dr. Rendell to see, I had a few questions about committee meetings. What I would like to know, what is the board policy, if we have a board policy, for the structure of a committee? And looking into it, I would like to see at a minimum an audio recording of the meetings, because as board members, we're not able to attend every single committee meeting, but at least we can go back and we can listen to the audio. I know it's very, probably more costly to do video, that would be ideal, but at minimum, we could do an audio recording, and at that, whenever we post the minutes to that meeting, we could also post the audio so that all the board members can listen to what's going on, the work that the committee's doing. Secondly, I would like us to discuss tonight about board members attending committee meetings. I personally, as a board member, feel like that we should go and be an observer. I don't feel that it's, I feel like it's a conflict of interest if a board member is an active participant of a committee. Because we know the goal of a committee is to bring the opinion to the board and for us to vote on it. So if we have a board member that's active in formulating the opinion of the committee, either, I see that as a conflict of interest unless the board member wants to not participate in the vote or the discussion whenever it comes to the board for a vote. So I just want to talk tonight about, you know, is there any other board members that would like to talk about maybe setting some parameters for the committees?
Would you like to take each item in turn? The
Okay.
audio recording protocol?
Okay.
Because that's something that the board has established at our organization meeting, I believe, the protocol for each of our meetings and what audiovisual coverage and how it's conducted and beyond in accordance with the law. What I believe you're describing, and I'll defer to our attorney on this, is above and beyond the statutory requirement for open records meetings. But I certainly see the value in memorializing a committee meeting insofar as that it doesn't inhibit the free flow of ideas at said meeting, and we would, of course, in order to be in compliance, we have, I believe Florida's a two-party consent, so we would have to notice people that they're being recorded. Or Mrs. D'Agresta, would you like to weigh in on any legal concerns with audio or video recording of subcommittee meetings?
Of course, Mr. Frost. The school board can certainly establish parameters of how its committees or the superintendent's committees are operated. You can certainly determine that they would be audio recorded or video recorded or whatever that would be. And of course, you are correct, that would then become part of the public record that would be maintained. I do suggest as part of your discussion that you talk about which committees are we talking about. Are we talking about carte blanche, all committees that are established by both the school board and the superintendent throughout the district? So you're talking about your school advisory council meetings that happen at each school? Are we talking about the instructional materials selection committee, the various committees that weigh in on the code of conduct? I mean, there's quite a few. The school board, of course, establishes by policy. I think you currently have two committees, the audit committee and the land use and acquisition advisory committee. So you can certainly establish what you wish for those committees to do, but then also talk about, if you would, just so it's clear, the extent of what you would like. Which committees would you like to be encompassed in this discussion of, as far as audio recording or video recording? Because it's a public meeting, there is no obligation to notify or obtain permission to record. It's a public meeting. Anyone could walk in here this evening and record the meeting as long as they're not, as long as they're not disrupting the meeting. So we don't have to get permission, if you will, for that to occur during our committee meetings, but you just may want to let people know if they're going to be video recorded so they can comb their hair and, you know, look presentable for the video. That's just nice to do.
Okay. All right.
So I would like to clarify.
Okay.
My intentions of having an audio recording would be for any time that the committee work will come before the board for a vote. I feel like for us to be more informed, to go back to listen to the audio of what the committee work is, what's taken place. That going into the SAC committees, no, I'm not. Those aren't, typically that's not something that comes to the board for a vote.
Okay, so you're, if I'm understanding you, we only have two committees to which the board appoints people.
Currently.
Is currently. Is it the intention, is it your intention to record those or anything that creates a work product for the school board?
Exactly. A work product for the school board.
Mrs. Simchak,
The county.
I believe you'd like to weigh in on this.
The county records their committees, so it's not something that's not practiced, so.
Okay. All right. During discussion, I'm going to just say, don't talk over each other, and I won't jump in. But otherwise, please, let's have a collegial exchange. So, Mrs. Simchak, you'll start us off.
You are correct. During the organizational meeting, we have certain committees that we are assigned ourselves, and then we have board-formed committees. I think we might be putting the cart in front of the horse this evening, discussing this, because in some areas. But I understand about wanting to memorialize if there are minutes. There are nuances, things, and usually when people take minutes, it's not verbatim, and I can understand that. The committees that we have organized but are not, that we have approved, which are the land use and the advisory budget audit committee. I would by all means say that the person recording the minutes has a digital recorder that could be downloaded in a WAV or something, just to memorialize upon request. I don't have a problem with the future. I think we might be talking about a committee that was not formed by us, if we're talking about future committees, and I'm not, and that might have just gotten away from us. If that was a committee to be reformed again, renamed, reformed, and it was a committee that where we appointed, I would be all for the tape. I don't want to move backwards, I want to move forward. So that being said, I would be in favor of the two committees that we now have appointed people, both land use and budget advisory, to be backed up with a digital audio recording. And that's really all I would want to commit to at this particular point. But I know you prefer to go, but now there's a recording, so you don't have to go on certain committees. As I said, as we move forward, we'll probably have some clarity in some other directions. But a while back, that was just my, because we're coming up to another election cycle again, and a lot of candidates want to serve on committees, and then when they come around to this end, they've done a lot of good work maybe, and it's hard to let go. But if that's going to be a clean, because it really wouldn't be so clean, because if they're in the middle of a straddling of an election, right, and somebody's sitting on the committee and then they get elected and we come up here, and the good advice, which I've given, would be get off that committee. So, I just think, for me, I could just say it's been cleaner not to attend. I'll pull back from the city of Sebastian. When I was a councilwoman in the city of Sebastian, I knew a lot of board members would come, because I sat on the environmental committee, and I would see a board member coming because it was a hot topic on something that was very important to them. And yet we were going to give a recommendation back to them, and that one was videotaped, which was, I'm just saying, I think the presence, it just sometimes adds cloudiness to it. That's a personal preference that I feel. But I think it's serious that we flush this out a little bit. And so I would agree. It would never hurt for the minute person to just have a digital recording for those two committees. As for anything else, I think that's where I'd like to leave it now, is I would support that. The other ones are, the ones that we attend are usually taped by, I'm not sure about MPO anymore.
It is, because the whole room is always hot.
Okay.
You
I
should know
remember
that.
when I was on Beach and Shore Preservation, it was not recorded, but it was a tape. So it just depends. So I do say thank you. I think that's not bad, having those two, committees. And as I said, that even by doing that, like, as you said, you might want to listen in a one-way fashion on the work that they're doing, but your presence, or my presence, or anyone's presence would not be needed, and then you can filter back, just, hey, could I have last? Anybody could request that. It's a public record at that point. So thank you for bringing that up. I think the two meetings is something I would like to see that happen, and that's what I would support, those two committees.
Mr. Searcy, would you like to weigh in?
Yes.
Thank you.
I just want to know what the protocol is for board members and their participation in committee meetings, whether they're appointed by us or anointed or whatever they get. But it almost, if we exert our influence at a committee meeting, it sort of puts the members of the committee at odds, because they feel uncomfortable in trying to override a board member's position. And I just think I need to know what the protocol is for board member participation in committees that we appoint or whatever. But more importantly, I want to know what because if the superintendent has meetings with principals and his staff, are we, as board members, can we just go in and just barge in and listen? I have a real hard time with that. I think the superintendent is sort of between the rock and the hard place, because he can't say, don't you come in here, because remember, he does work for us. And if a board member pops in there and says, hey, I'm visiting, I'm going to listen in on what you've got to say, I think we have a problem. So I'd just like to find out what the protocol is, so that every board member knows, and that we don't get involved in trying to micromanage and actually run the district. We have a great superintendent that's doing a good job for us. You can pay me later for that. But I just want to know.
Performance review is coming up soon, isn't it? Quick reminder, you're on channel 21, channel 98.
And this board is the only one that can set the protocol.
Right. Mrs. DeAgresta, I believe you've issued a letter to us around some of these finer points. If you'd mind touching on that for us, please.
Absolutely. The school board did in fact adopt as part of its bylaws several years ago a specific provision regarding school board participation in district committee meetings, and board members are certainly able to attend those types of committee meetings, and the policy says that any board member who does wish to attend may participate in discussion as members of the public, not as a member of the committee. So if the committee takes public comment or takes input from the audience, if you will, then if a school board member is in attendance as an audience member, they may participate as a member of the public. And then the policy goes on to say that statements by board members which reflect personal opinion will be clearly identified as such to the committee, so that it's clear that any board member is not speaking on behalf of the school board, but is speaking in their individual capacity at that meeting. So you do have that policy in place with regard to committee meetings. There is no specific policy or procedure in place with regard to board member attendance at staff meetings or superintendent called administrator meetings, retreats, those sorts of things. So you have really no policy or procedure with regard to that category of meeting, but you do with regard to committee meetings.
Okay, and as chair, I kind of let this slide. So I will refocus us. We're taking this point by point. Have we resolved the matter of recording? We've heard from Mrs. Simchek that her interest lies only in the 2 appointed committees where each of us has a delegate. Mr. Searcy, would you like to opine on that?
I think it's a good idea. Do we record now in those committees that we have? And land use doesn't meet very often.
They meet every 10 years, roughly.
The other, budget or whatever committee meets on a real regular basis.
They do.
Do they video or audio that meeting?
My understanding is they do not, but they capture minutes.
We do not audio or videotape, we do capture minutes.
So we could have a backup. Our policy could be that our protocol could be that we capture audio as a backup to the printed minutes, should there be any discrepancies or a member wishes, because I'd love to hear those, actually. I wish that I could, I just check in with the chair to hear what happened after. So it'd be even better if I could hear the actual discussion and not bother the chair and do this at 2 in the morning when I wake up. So I would go along with that. Is Mrs. Zork, you seem to have a
No, I do have a question,
clarification.
because you're bringing up very good points that you can't always attend all the meetings. And then also, if you attend meetings, it might seem intrusive to the committee members where they don't feel that they can openly discuss what they want to say. So I just want to go back to the idea, but to the fact that we have very important committees that meet that are looking to bring their work to us, but yet unless we attend every single meeting, because the minutes do not capture everything that's going on because I've attended some of the committee meetings and then I've read the minutes, and it's just basically the outline of the agenda. So it doesn't really capture the conversation and discussions unless we want to look at someone else to take minutes for these. But I just, I don't know why we would be opposed to audioing these committees. I just, that's the part I don't understand.
Well, I think the point that the attorney made is very important, that how many committees do we have in this school district?
None.
You should see all the district.
Bunches,
Nancy can
hundreds,
speak to,
maybe.
Mrs. Esplin can speak to. When you look at, hopefully you all are opening your emails that say all the district meetings, I mean, it's like 20, 30 meetings sometimes a month. And those include all sorts of
School
things.
advisory committee.
So now we're capturing public documents for that. Mrs. Justice, you've been quiet.
I would agree with Mrs. Zork. I think it's a wonderful idea to audio the meetings. I think the more accurate we can have a representation of exactly what's happening in the meeting is what's in the best interest of the staff and students and committee members. So I think it's a wonderful idea. Thank you for bringing that forward for us today.
Thank you.
But Is it-
Mrs. Simchek.
Thank you. Only the two. I don't want to get into the SAC or anything. Just the committees that we have members on, Mr. Searcy. Not all.
That's what I said, that's what
I
I
just
said.
want, yeah, I
That's
agree
what
with you.
said,
I agree
yeah.
with you.
Because, I mean, if you want to video or audio them all, we're talking probably 50 or 100 different committees that we've got.
But may I ask, is there a place to attach, I mean, I know we have the meetings of the month, and we have our board meeting. Is there a
Right.
place to attach the audio so somebody doesn't have to request it? Is it, if somebody does a digital, is there for our committee meetings, where the schedule is, could we attach the audio? Then it's memorialized forever. Someone could just download, click, and go there. You know how on a school board meetings, we have the agenda, the backup, and then we have,
Minutes and video.
the minutes and video, and somewhere where that could just be attached to the website, so any board member could go on and listen to what the budget, finance committee, advisory committee has just had to say, or let's say the land use, which again meets so seldom, so this isn't really troublesome to who's doing the minutes. Is that a technical?
question?
I mean, I'm looking at Mr. Green.
Isn't that true?
I'm waiting for Mr. Green to shake his head and say, not a
The
problem.
legislative question, isn't that true?
Yes.
Statement, isn't that true?
Currently on the website have a place for district committees where files can be uploaded, an audio file could be uploaded similar to a PDF.
So each meeting would probably need its own subpage, and then we would archive the files and link to them from said subpage. You know, what I think would be a good idea, I'm all for transparency, and I like the idea of being able to listen to as many meetings as possible. I would be actually more comfortable if the committees sort of self-selected to do the audio and minutes if we're going to capture them. I think that rather than foist that upon them, that if the committees were to opt in to audio recording, that would be my personal preference. Mrs. Simchak, would you?
No, and I'm sorry. No, because we
I'm
appoint them.
counting up here and I'm having trouble.
That's nice, but what if they vote no?
Right.
This is
Well,
a
then they
public,
vote no.
no, but this is a public transparency issue. And also, let me tell you why. Because, but I know what you're saying. You want the buy-in from the committees, but what I'm looking at is, if there are members, and I applaud those that attend those meetings, I prefer to see it come to me clean. I haven't heard anything. That's my approach. But what I'm saying is, there are people that want to listen to that progression. They did it this week, then they vacillated here, or this came up and this way up, and they are sitting in on meetings, and that's taking up time. They get that same effect with an audio. And because it's a committee to bring forth, but there's no interdialogue. They're not influencing the committee. They're not present. They're not. So let's say I selected my person for the Budget Finance Advisory Committee. And I've talked to them and said, hey, this is how I feel. And now I go to the meeting and I don't say anything, but I'm just sitting there. And they want to divert from my feeling. They might feel if they're offending me. And, yeah, and I give them that look, you know, like I give my kid. But, no, I'm just saying, there's a lot of hypotheticals, but I'm saying is, we're transparent. It's public education. It's just a lady going like this with a digital, ding, when they start. And then it's a little, someone going like that to conclude. So I don't want to go back to them and see how they voted. Their minutes are taken. Now we're going to get the full expression, as you said. Everything's memorialized. Just the way somebody said. Did you ever see that thing with the car? Is this my car? Is this my car? You can hear the whole meeting if you like, if you so indulge. So I applaud you wanting to be inclusive, but it's our committee. We developed it. It's the public. It's transparent, and people from home can click on it now.
Point of
if they
clarification.
so choose.
I'm totally fine with, if it's the pleasure of this board, that the two committees, which we've already referenced and to which we have delegates, let's do it. Let's record that. For those committees which Dr. Rendell has established or have been established by administration, it would be this board member's preference that they opt into any recording. But I certainly, I'm fine with the two that we have. It seems we've arrived at some sort of agreement on that. But on the matter of, I don't even know, like student code of conduct or something like that, if those meetings were to be audio recorded, it would be my preference that the people doing, see, listen, I sit up here and I do my homework, and when something, you know a tree by its fruit. The work product comes to us. And at that time, my preference is to look at the proposal before us, weigh it against the existing policy, desired future state, and then see does it make sense. The sausage making is of less concern to me as long as the kids are going to eat. So that's right, Jimmy D. It's getting late. It's time to get peckish. But so we're dancing around this, but
Well, I think,
what would be, Mrs. Simchek, would you like to, with
Yes,
that clarification, would you like to weigh in?
Yeah, I would like to weigh in. So I think that you went from point to point. I think that we've established the two committees that we appoint. We've decided to do audio. I don't think there's really any reason to discuss anything further at this point. And then there was another issue that she brought up.
Well, I don't, so I hear you saying that you only want, basically it's the one committee.
The two
The
committees.
audit, because the land acquisition committee never meets.
They have.
They meet.
They've met once in 2 years.
But that fit inside these parameters.
Right,
These are
right.
board-appointed delegates.
But I
Which I
think
still
we
think
should have the flexibility as a board to say, this is
Pick winners and losers.
a very important vote that's coming before us, and we should be able to choose what committees that we should be open government. The more transparent we are, the better the business is. I don't know, I'm just really perplexed why we would oppose having just a basic audio recorder to record meetings. I mean, this should be as open government as we could get. So I just feel like, why not?
Well, then name them. Because you have to clarify, we've got principal
Okay.
meetings, we got SAC meetings, then go ahead.
No,
Name the name, call the names.
Currently, the two that I felt like that's doing very important work that we should be paying close attention to is the Code of Conduct and the African American Achievement Committee. Those are two committees that I don't personally feel like I should be in the midst of setting there, but I would like to know what is the discussion going on in those. And also, these committees, they meet up to 3-4 months, so you also have committee members who aren't able to attend every committee. So for them to go back and also listen to the work of the committee versus whenever they miss a committee meeting in the next committee, they're behind basically on what work has already taken place. And so I think it's not only beneficial for us, but it's also beneficial to the committee members to be able to go back and listen to the work.
Mr. Frost?
You're recognized.
Thank you. For the record, I agree with the two committees that are board-appointed committees. I also agree with Mrs. Zork. I think transparency is best. I see no reason why we wouldn't record all of the meetings. Again, so that everything's accurate and transparent. I think that's a wonderful practice. And I think that Mrs. Zork has made some excellent points this evening about it. So, while I understand Ms. Simchek's point, I think if the board if there are other committees that are operating within the school district, with the exception of the SAC committees that are happening at schools, I don't feel that that's necessary. But, I don't see any reason why I wouldn't support what Mrs. Zork is saying.
Mrs. Simchek.
So then I have to ask the superintendent, what other committees, because we must be clear, we must give him clear direction.
Correct.
So what other committees can you think of, Dr. Rendell, that you would feel?
Mr. Frost? May I, for
Yes.
a moment, I just have two questions. A point of clarification on the two board committees, because that was done at the organizational meeting, would that be something that would have to come back before the board to vote on in some way?
Yeah, it'd be good practice too. I mean, just,
And then my second question, if I could quickly, is that would perhaps this requires some thought and some information gathering. Ms. Esplin could gather a list of the committees, and then we could speak about this again when we have an accurate list of committees in front of us.
that would be my preference. Mrs. DiAgresta.
Thank you, Mr. Frost. My suggestion, as you were going through your discussion, my suggestion with regard to the two board-appointed committees, your Audit Committee and your Land Use Advisory Committee, I would suggest that we include those in the school board resolution where you establish your meeting setup protocols for this room, that we include that as another category so it's clear that staff should be prepared to do that kind of recording. And then as you, of course, expand that list, it may not be appropriate for that resolution, but I do suggest that there is a listing so that, again, it's clear that what your anticipation is for those meetings as far as recordings. Perhaps a second resolution that deals with miscellaneous advisory committees as created.
Okay. Mrs. Simchick, you're recognized.
So then, would it be appropriate to say that the next board meeting, when we can take action, we modify the existing resolution to include the audio of the two, add that as a subcategory and to include audios, bring that to action at the next board meeting. And then the next board meeting for discussion, have handy the extensive list or short list of what the other committees. This gives Dr. Rendell time for reflection and then us time for reflection on how we want to handle it.
So we're not responding. We're thinking about this. We're giving it the careful thought. Okay? See some heads. Mr. Searcy, would you like to speak?
At some point, common sense has to prevail.
Right.
And some of the things that I hear, we may be lacking on that just a little bit. And it's almost like if we have a committee and we appointed the committee on the, what's the second one you said, Laura, about the?
African American Achievement
the other
Committee.
one.
The Code of Conduct.
Code of Conduct. We know right now who we appoint to that committee. I think that's don't we?
No.
We don't
No, they
appoint that.
volunteer. It's a
Well,
volunteer
we
committee.
could, when we know that committee is going to be formed or is being formed or whatever, we could suggest from this dais that committee be recorded. I mean, on a case-by-case basis, if we let them know in advance.
Well, I think
That would make sense to me.
I don't disagree, and I think that our next discussion session, we can arrive at that, and we'll have some information shared with us by staff on possible recommendations. And of course, we can express our druthers at that point in the discussion and hear from the youths. Mrs. Simchick.
Just to give you an example, we were recently at a workshop, and there was a community school committee for Pelican Island. And I was very happy to see chief of police and all these people that had served on the committee, but they came in, it was like, hey, how? And they were in a committee working all on this stuff without us even knowing. And so I understand transparency and with our committees that we have, and then we have these two other committees that are straddling somewhere in between that are going to bring back a recommendation, but we don't appoint anybody. And then we have a committee like that we didn't even know was going on because it was particular to the school. So I don't know how in the reads we want to go. So that's why I think it's great that we think about this, we get lists, because I don't want to be,
knee-jerk.
Hasty,
Yeah.
just a last comment.
That's fair. Mrs. Ork.
Yeah, and
You're
the
recognized.
superintendent, he calls for certain committees, and I think that would be a good start right there. What committees does he call? And then go from there. But I do agree, I'm not going into the weeds of the school, but I'm going into if it affects, if it's gonna come before us for a vote, or if it's, something that we're gonna have to vote on, absolutely.
I'm not going to belabor it because I feel like we've reached,
Yeah.
we're in violent agreement at this point. And I lost the point. Okay, there it is, it's back. The community schools is an excellent example. That's something that was happening that came before us as a workshop and potentially could still come before us as an action item, but it's, you know, that's two bites at the apple. So I'm glad that we've arrived at the agreement to give this more thought and some time, and for staff to also weigh in, and I think we're good. All right, very good. Have we resolved the matter?
On that one.
No.
Okay, what
No,
else do you have?
because we also need to go back to, maybe looking at revising the policy that a board member can attend a meeting, since we don't know if we're gonna record them or not, as an observer, but I don't feel as a board member that it's bringing a fair opinion to us if a board member is an active participant of a committee that's bringing forth an opinion.
I think that's also something that could use some breathing space, and that's something we can take up at our next meeting as well. Members, I mean, is there anyone?
Yeah, I'll debate. Yeah,
Mrs.
sure.
Simchick.
Because, Mrs. Zork, when you were elected, I had shout over the bow warning, I don't think people should go to meetings. Whether you participated or not, you continue to go. It's in our policy that you can go. I just gave my good advice that I think is good because it's from me. But I mean, that's up to you. I mean, I don't want to start changing policies. That was just something that I shouted out, and I thought it was good practice. I'm not getting involved in that. I'm not in favor of changing anything in our policy. The policy that stands is fine. We're all big girls and big boys and should act accordingly. And I don't always agree with my other board members, what they say in public, what they say to the press, or how they feel. But that's what makes the 5 different heads work. I like that it isn't 5 yeses all the time. So, you know, like I said, that's just my personal feeling, but I feel the policy's fine, so I'm going to state that right now. I don't need any more time to think about it. And when it first came up, I spoke about it, and I said my opinion, but I would not fault anybody else's for their own, as long as they fall within the legal descriptions of our policies. And the attorney has said a letter, and also has said in front of us tonight that it's not a problem to have a board member attend or speak or say anything at a meeting. So like I said, I won't be.
Well,
Recognized.
it was a policy that was set, and, you know, I've always said, why are we doing what we do? And I don't think that we should just always do the same thing over and over, because that's just what we've always done. We gotta look at, does it make sense? And yes, you know, I do agree that board members should be able to attend these meetings, especially with them not being audio recorded. We should be able to attend these meetings as an observer. But I do not think that a board member, like, I should not be able to go to a committee and try to formulate the opinion of the committee, and because I don't think that it's bringing fair representation back to the rest of the board members. Now, if a board member wants to attend a committee, and if they would like to help formulate the opinion of that committee, then I think that the board members should not participate in discussion or be able to vote whenever it comes up here to us, because I think it's too much, it's a conflict of interest.
I don't know that rises to that. Any further?
We can't have a policy for everything. This is a big deal, though. It really is, and we need to consider it, even if it's the next meeting or whenever we need to do it. But sometimes you got to decide: are you a board member or are you a citizen? And issues have come up that sort of they get real gray, and we got to make decisions. And we all, like Simchick said, there are 5 of us up here, and you do what you want to do, and if you get in trouble about it, you're in trouble, and we've got an attorney to hopefully take care of us down there. But common sense has to prevail. It has to. And if you get folks that are, well, we can't make a rule for everything. Common sense, I'd like to write one up that just says common sense. Because we can't go
Don't be
back,
evil.
we can't go back and
Google's
and
mission
try to recreate the minutes of a meeting, because once the horse is out of the barn, Sean, for you, it's over. You can't go back and recreate it. And maybe we don't need to know all of the weeds that are out there. Maybe we need to know the recommendation of the committee so that we can do what we're supposed to do, and that is set policy.
Okay. And was that a reference to my family's equine business, I'm assuming?
No, you were talking about the sausage a while ago.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay. All right. We don't like horses out of the barn unless we're leaving, but that's another story. Okay.
Laura's got to have more. Maybe not.
No, I just, so are we gonna bring this back or not?
Well, I think that enough has been said today.
Okay, so can I just ask that,
If you would like something added to the agenda for discussion, the chair sets that in conversation with, at the guidance and
Point of order.
recommendation of the superintendent. Point of order.
If we're in discussion and she wants an item brought to the action agenda.
Action.
It should be brought up
Correct.
today, and we have that authority, but that's what happened from discussion to action, if I'm not
Yes,
mistaken.
but
Sure.
So I think my fellow board member is asking for clarity. Are we interested in changing that policy of whether someone can attend? My consensus, and this is where we form consensus, so why don't we just do it tonight? We're doing all the work.
Right.
My consensus is no,
Okay.
count heads, sir.
Count head.
should be a clarity though, attend or participate?
I think you're asking to change a policy, and
We have clear
we have
policy.
clear policy.
She wants it changed. She wants
To
the
where
policy
attendance is not possible.
No, no,
That's there's a little First Amendment issue there, isn't there?
It's an open government issue. If we have a committee, let's say it's the audit committee, just as an example, those meetings are held pursuant to the Sunshine Law, which means those meetings are open to the public. So a board member of this board, because it's open to the public, can attend that meeting. So I don't want anyone to think that we can change a policy to say that board members cannot attend public meetings.
Thank you.
Okay.
no, and I didn't say not attend. I said, I feel that board members should not participate, only attend and observe.
Attend and observe, and I participate in the legislature as an individual, and you don't surrender your First Amendment rights when you become elected. Am I accurate in that statement?
I would just clarify it that if this committee is accepting comments from the public, then anyone sitting in that public section would have the ability to comment. However, if the subject committee is not accepting comments from the public, and we do have some committees that just do their work and bring their information back, then a member of the public, no matter who that person is, would not have the ability to speak. So we need to clarify what committee we're talking about and whether or not that committee is accepting public comment.
Mr. Searcy.
That's a very good point. So the chairman of the committee or that committee could vote to allow public comment or not allow public comment? You have an appointed chairman, you have members of the committee. Could they internally just decide we're not going to accept any public input? Could they do that?
I think that it is important at this point to clarify between the two committees for which we have appointees and which are held in the Sunshine, and any other type of committee, because we're mixing metaphors here. So, Mrs. DeAugusta, outline.
If a committee has the authority to make a final decision on an issue, okay, if you think back to the rules for our school board meetings, we are required by law to have public comment with regard to any proposition that comes before the board for action. So if you're having a workshop where you're just simply talking about different issues, you're not taking any final action, there will be further discussion and action at a board meeting, you are not required to take public comment by law. You may, if you wish, but you are not legally required to do that. So if you take that concept and apply it to your committees, your audit advisory committee, Your Audit Advisory Committee at this juncture does not have any final authority. They can listen to information. They can make a decision amongst themselves as far as what their recommendation is, and their recommendation is to you, the school board, on a topic. You can accept their recommendation, you can decline their recommendation, you can ignore their recommendation. So it's an advisory committee. So that Audit Advisory Committee is not legally required to accept public comment, but if that committee wished to hear from the public on whatever topic that they happen to be discussing at that time, they certainly could. They're not legally required to. I can give you an example. I attended an Audit Advisory Committee meeting. They were talking about an issue, and a member of the public began offering public comment to that advisory committee. The chairman did allow some aspect of public comment, and then at a certain point said, okay, public comment is completed, we're now moving on. So it's incumbent upon the chairman and perhaps to have a discussion with the other members as to what their practice will be, but it's not legally required, but you may if you wish. It's very similar to some of the processes this board has followed with regard to some of your workshops.
Okay.
That's my concern, Sean.
That answers your concern?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's bring this in for a landing. So we have, it seems that there's interest in a future action item to add audio recording to the 2 appointed committees. Okay, nod. Okay. And if it is the wish, it doesn't seem and no more. Is that accurate? Okay. And if Mrs. Zork would like to bring it up for discussion at our next business meeting, we can add that to the discussion section of the agenda.
Point of order.
Yes.
If the lady wants to bring it up, she brought it up in discussion, and I thought that the rule was when we go from discussion, it goes to action. And it doesn't have to be voted on here, it's just she wants to bring it to action I'm going to say at the next regular meeting, and then we can do the voting, because we obviously can't vote here, and nods may
Sure
or
we
may
can.
not work.
You could actually make a motion right now, and it would be adopted. But the point is it should have appeared on it. I mean, I know that there's discussion about that, but there could be a motion. I mean, we could formalize this now, and you could make that motion that was just made to add this to a future agenda item, and then we could vote, correct? Or no? Because it hasn't been. Okay. So you want it added to the...
That's what the recommendation is from Ms. Zork.
It's not always the problem. We don't have-
That's
we're
not an
not
emergency
obligated
item, we
to-
can't vote on it, I don't think.
No.
I thought you had to get consensus to bring anything to action.
I'll put anything on action.
So for
I'm the chair.
clarification.
Go ahead then.
Clarification, please.
Yes.
Okay. So yes, I would like to bring it forward about having audio for the 2 standing committees that the board appoints. But also, I was under the understanding that at the next meeting that we have more guidance from the superintendent on his committees and that we run through those committees to see what other committees that we would like to have audioed.
Those 2 specific committees, or he would bring a recommendation?
Well, not that
Because
he's
that
going to
would
bring
be-
us a recommendation, but
He has
he's
to legally
going
either recommend
to-
or not recommend an action item that appears on agenda, correct, Mrs.
But
DePristo?
if I'm asking for it to be brought, I'm asking for in the discussion item for us to discuss it, and then at that time, or maybe I'll
Put it
just-
on a future action item, whatever's resolved that. Okay, that's the way I understood it to be. So,
I support Mrs. Zork's
Very
putting
good.
it on discussion for the next meeting and then having a discussion about it and then moving forward in whatever way we choose to do so.
very good. So do we want to still have, so you do want to have the action item on the 2 committees and add anything else to the discussion? Just other committees to have audio recording. Very good. Are we good?
Yes, sir.
We're good. So resolved. Having dispatched that question, did you have anything else for discussion?
Yes, I have about 4 other items. No,
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding, I don't.
You don't?
That's it.
That's it? Okay. Would any board member like to offer anything else in discussion? Hearing none, let's move on to item 10, school board member matters. Start with Mr. Cersey.
Nope, nothing for me.
Mrs. Ork.
Oh, thank you. It's been a very exciting month. The staff has been very supportive in going out and speaking on behalf of our Adult Career Tech Center and giving presentations. We had one today at the Economic Development Council, and we had a lot of interest in helping support us through writing letters to the governor in support of the job growth grant that we've applied for. So I know it's time consuming and they have to prepare a lot for these meetings, but fingers crossed at the end of the day it's going to be well worth it. So I appreciate you guys for taking the time to go out to these presentations that I've been setting up for us. That's it.
Okay. Mrs. Simchek.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank the new members of the community that's come out and over such a very important item. I do want to thank former board member Claudia Jimenez. Years ago when I started on the board, I noticed that we had an inadequate allotment of one school resource officer at the high school, and I lobbied for that. I know that it was important for mental health, but she was kind enough to see my point of view and vote towards that addition, as long as we did not forget mental health funding, which sometimes gets lost. And so looking back, I'm very proud of her work because in an item that was very important to me. As with the speakers tonight, and as what has happened as a result of some tragedies that recently occurred, we all received lots of emails regarding safety of students in schools, and this is, how about you do this, and how come we don't know this plan? And as the well-equipped speaker said today, you don't give your plans out, but rest assured that there's been meeting with law enforcement offices and officers, and that there's a lot of work behind the scenes, and that safety has been so important to us. We certainly have had in the past safety analyses of the school situations regarding cameras and certain things, and periodically through budget we have been able to address those, but a lot of those we have exclusion, and thank God, from public to protect and beef up security. So I thank the people that have come out and actually thanked us, and thanked law enforcement as well. But I also want to let the people know at home, rest assured that this board is very proactive, very positive, very concerned, and will work very hard for their safety. And I applaud my fellow board members for feeling that way as well. That's one thing we are in unison of, and I'm very proud of that. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Simchek. Mrs. Justice.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Frost. I want to echo Ms. Simchek's comments. I think that seeing the partnership between law enforcement and the school district has been wonderful. I think we had a very productive executive session, and then we had a press conference. I think that we are doing a good job communicating with our stakeholders, our families and guardians and students. I actually had the opportunity to come to understand some of the different drills that we're having at different schools, and really come to respect and understand what we're asking of our teachers and of our students and of our staff. I feel that I'm happy that we are utilizing text messaging, moving into the age of technology, so that's wonderful. With the Safe Schools money that will be coming to pay for school resource officers, there will also be some mental health dollars that will be coming to districts around the state. And I want to say thank you to our legislators for allocating those dollars for that cause. I think it's so very important. We recognize that many of our students come into our classrooms dealing with some unimaginable issues in their lives, and anything that we can do to help to make them feel safe and valued in our classrooms is important, and I certainly support that. So I'm interested to see how the school district, Dr. Rendell and his staff, will use those dollars to better meet the needs of our students. I was able to go to the kindergarten roundup. Parents, VPK registration is going on right now. Ms. Fled could probably give us some dates if she's able to. And so, thank you again to the Kindergarten Readiness Collaborative for bringing all of these different partners together. Brooke Flood did such a good job representing us there. Mr. Green was there with the Kindergarten Digital Initiative, and I was able to experience that. And something of note that's very important, that's available on our website, and that's not just available for our students, that's available for all students. So if you're at home, if you're at the library and you have access to a computer, log on to the school district site and check out some of those different ways that your students, your children can learn about how to use technology so that they're better prepared when they enter into our classrooms. And it's so wonderful to see all these amazing community partners working together to make sure that our students are ready when they enter our classrooms. As always, I'm proud to be a member of this board, and I hope that I represent all of our constituents, our parents, and community members well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Searcy, you are recognized for Member Matters.
Well, I passed a minute ago, but I was trying to collect my thoughts. But I think that there was a video earlier about it, but I think it's really important. I commend the superintendent for getting our administrators out there in the classroom, because every day we make rules and demands on our teachers and everyone in the schools, out in the schools, and sometimes we don't know how it affects them. So I just commend you, Dr. Rendell, and the staff for going out and teaching and letting the folks know that staff cares and finding out exactly what we're saddling those teachers with. So my thanks to all of you folks that did that. So thank you.
Thank you. That's a great segue into the things I want to discuss. Yeah, well, tonight we heard from a speaker about VAM and value-added model, and some of the options that are. Well, what we heard tonight was some of the concerns it creates, and the bit of the good news of that is that we are exploring some options, and I won't blow up the bargaining process, but I will say that I think it's good that we're exploring options to VAM and looking at having everything on the table. And I really like the idea of high-impact local. I think that that's a conversation that we can continue with our stakeholders. And I do all sorts of things, so I won't give you the morning report, the long or the short. Some of you got the Lion King reference. Okay. But I will say, in conversations, one of the things I do is I've reached out to the Speaker of the Florida House and President Negron as well around the idea of, since this district is not going to participate in the 67, it seems as though the district is not going to participate in the $67 million Guardian program, that there is the possibility of a special budget session or a special committee session whereby those dollars could feasibly, if districts are not availing themselves of those dollars within that bucket, that without the legislature meeting again, there is a special budget meeting, a committee meeting, a joint committee meeting, where they could potentially take those dollars and move them into SROs. So $67 million around the state. Round numbers, there are 67 districts, that's $1 million. If nobody did it, or let's just say it's $500,000. That goes a long way towards the commitments this board has made regarding having trained and sworn law enforcement officers at every school site. So one of the things I'm doing is I'm working that angle to continue having that idea in front of them so that this board, or that the students in this district can weigh in, and I will have a bit of a call to action at some point, perhaps as we get closer to that process, to let them know. But if you choose to now, their email addresses are on the myfloridahouse.gov and flsenate.gov, I think is the other one. Just look them up. And Senate President Joe Negron and Speaker of the House Richard Corcoran, they're still their chamber leaders until November. So you may want to put in their ear to potentially shift some of those dollars around to SROs for those districts that have moved in the direction we've headed. So with that, I would encourage you to go to and I think it's April 9th is the literacy. I know you're April 7th, thank you.
April 7th is a poetry slam. I'm sorry, yeah, the poetry slam, and I may be slamming some poetry. I'm not sure how that looks yet, but I'm going to figure it out. And so that's April 7th at Gifford Middle School. It's awesome. And then again, April 21st at the Sebastian River High School field, we will be making a giant moonshot rocket. They will take a picture from overhead. It's awesome. And then that track and field event that all counties, so all of our elementary schools have track and field teams. and how neat to see them all come together and all the coaches and all the kids participate and high school kids are out there helping. It's just awesome. Sorry, Mr. Foss.
That's okay.
I love it.
And with that, I close. Dr. Rendell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to hit on 2 points that were brought up again here at the end of the meeting. Number one, the school resource officers. We really owe a big debt of gratitude to our local law enforcement agencies. You know, they stepped up to provide this service. The Vero Beach Police Department is providing the full-time officer at Beachland and the full-time officer at Rosewood Magnet. Sebastian Police is providing the full-time officer at Sebastian Elementary and Pelican Island Elementary. And then the Sheriff's Office is providing a resource officer at all the other elementary schools, our Adult Education Center, and the Wabasso School. So it's a team effort by all the local law enforcement, not just the Sheriff's Office, so I didn't want to leave the smaller agencies out. They're all contributing. And then I want to thank Mr. Searcy for giving me a plug about Classroom Connection. On the video, I was teaching 7th grade civics. Please pray for me tonight. Tomorrow, I am teaching 2nd grade. So with that, I'm done. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anything else for the good of the district? All right, and with no further business, we are adjourned.